338 million. This was the amount of money that 9 steel manufacturers were fined last week by the Competition Authority of Kenya. It was for cartel conduct and anti-competitive business practices that were found to disadvantage customers. Now, it was historic in many ways, considering it was the highest amount penalized to date. However, it was not the first time that fines have been imposed on private companies. I will highlight some of those in a bit, but first, I want to give you some background on why and how this is done, and indeed the law that empowers the Competition Authority to do this. So, it is basically the Competition Act that works to shield or protect the consumer from unfair practices by business owners in the private sector. Now, it does this by penalizing anti-competitive practices. It is this law that guides the operations of the Competition Authority of Kenya, and that is the body that enhances the welfare of you, the consumer, by monitoring the activities of businesses. Now, for context, I want to take you back to what I promised. The steel industry is not the only one where they have penalized businesses. Like I said earlier, they have conducted investigations in other sectors too and found players culpable of cartel conduct and imposed fines. So in 2016, 10 firms in the Outdoor Association of Kenya were fined a total of close to 11.9 million shillings. In 2014, the Association of Kenya Reinsurers was fined slightly over 721,000 shillings. More recently, in 2021, 4 paint manufacturers were fined a total of 66 million shillings for cartel conduct, which included things like price fixing. Now, those fines are not just imposed arbitrarily. The Competition Act guides this. So the Competition Authority of Kenya fines a penalty of up to 10% of the company's previous year's turnover. Now, these fines are arrived at, by the way, after a painstaking investigation process that could sometimes take years to conclude. Let's talk about that process now, because it includes a couple of stages. First is screening, and this is meant to determine if there is a case to begin with and whether an official probe is even warranted. So they will go to the ground, gather intelligence. For instance, in the case of the steel manufacturers, they even went to hardware shops, speaking to the sellers, comparing prices. Now, once they have established the need for a formal investigation, they then set up what is known as a sting operation, and it involves conducting dawn raids, seizing relevant documents from the companies under investigations. This is, of course, done after getting a search warrant from the courts that sanctions the process. Now, during this, they collect as much as they can, documents, phones, computers, that are then forensically analyzed to get more information. And this forensics goes through call records, WhatsApp messages, text messages. They'll look at emails. They will take a look at the minutes of meetings that have been held, sales reports, price lists, even amendments to those price lists. What are they looking for in all of this? One thing: collusion or coordination. That is, competitors agreeing on trade terms, which is illegal. They then build a case and they invite the accused for a rebuttal. And this can sometimes involve multiple meetings. In the case of the steel manufacturers, up to 50 meetings were held between their companies and legal teams and the Competition Authority of Kenya. Now, once a decision is arrived at, one way or the other, in terms of culpability, that decision is approved by the board. Now, should they find some element of wrongdoing, it would be that companies have been found guilty of cartel conduct. Now, I know we use the word cartel quite liberally in this country, but let me explain what the word cartel conduct actually means. So, cartel conduct is considered the most serious form of anti-competitive practice and is, in fact, a breach of the competition law in Kenya. It is basically 2 or more competing businesses or individuals who seek to limit or reduce competition in the market. And they do this in several ways. Now, let's stay here for a moment. One of the ways that cartel conduct is exhibited is price fixing. Now, this occurs when competitors in a business sector enter into an agreement to either raise, fix, or maintain the price for a product or a service. Price fixing can include agreements, for instance, to establish a minimum price. It can be an agreement to eliminate discounts or to adopt a standard formula for calculating prices. Now, another form of cartel conduct is limiting sales or outputs. This involves an agreement between competing businesses to limit the volume of particular goods or services that are available on the market. It could also be when competitors agree to prevent or restrict the volume or type of particular goods or services that are available in the market. Now, if we move on to the next one, cartels can also opt to do something called sharing of territories. This is where each business decides to operate within a certain zone or a region and not the whole country or jurisdiction. So now, if you're a fan of those films or series with a drug plot, you know the type, Narcos, Power, Godfather, I think there's one called Queen of the South, then you know what this is, right? Where drug cartels agree to operate only in one region and not another. Now, obviously, I'm not talking about, illegitimate business here. So let me try to define this in legitimate terms. Dividing territories in the business world is not good for you, the consumer, and this is why. You would not be able to access the full range of products and services from different companies in your region, and therefore you will not have the full benefit of variety of price and quality. So imagine this: if there were margarine brands, you would only get access to one brand if you lived in Nairobi, while those in Kisumu have access to another brand, and those in Olkalau only have one type of margarine brands available in their shops, rather than all of you having full access to the full range of brands from different companies, no matter where you are, so that you, the consumer, can choose what you want, at the price you want, and what works for you. Now, there is also something known as bid rigging. So this is where two or more competitors agree that they will not compete with each other for particular tenders or share information on their tenders or allow one of the participants in the agreement to win the tender. The one who doesn't win the tender gets a kickback. This is also not good because it is not the person with the best qualifications that wins, but rather the one that is agreed upon. So remember, a tender process looks at a number of issues, right? A company's ability to deliver on the work, their financial capability to carry out the project, and most importantly, the quality of work. And that is why many or several companies are invited to bid, and it is the most competitive bid that wins. So when they collude, then it defeats the whole process of the tendering process and then affects the outcome of the work. Now, why does all of this matter to you, right? Effective competition is important for you, the consumer. Kenya is a liberal market, and the cost of goods and services should be determined by the laws of demand and supply. Any interference in this process, such as collusion by cartel members, is illegal in a free economy such as Kenya's. Competition in the market enables you to access competitively priced goods and services. It gives you access to innovative products, and it also gives you increased quality and choice. Now, when sectors are free of cartels, there is also more investors who are interested in the market. As we've pointed out, cartels typically work to restrict any form of competition and therefore entry of other competitors into the sector. Let me give you an example. You see, in the case of paint manufacturers, it was established that there was an agreement not to import some specific raw materials so as to reduce the supply locally. The Competition Authority, in fact, estimates that their intervention in that sector led to consumer savings of about 218 million shillings. Now, in the case of the recent fine against the 9 steelmakers, industry experts estimate that the cartel conduct caused the prices of steel products to go up by up to 30%. And that, of course, drove up the cost of construction, which then affects you, the consumer. That is why consumer protection is very important in this country and why those big numbers should matter to you. That's my explainer tonight.